So I'm here with Andy Powers, master builder at Taylor Guitars, the man who comes up with the ideas for all the new guitars and making the existing guitars better and all that stuff. So Andy, thank you for spending some time with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for coming down to visit us.
Let's talk about this guitar you're playing right now for the moment.
All right.
This is the 800 series guitar?
Yeah, this is a new 814E model. And it's interesting, the 800 series, that was the first, it was the first series that Bob Taylor had designed as an actual thing, as an actual, call it a product line, but really a guitar model, or a series of guitar shapes. And so...
This was back
yeah, this was literally 1974. It was the first real model. Or series of models that he designed. And so a couple of years ago, I guess about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, Bob and I, we were talking about stuff, and he goes, you know, I really like these guitars you've been building. It's like, it's time, you should take the 800 series. That was my guitar. I've taken it as far as I can take it over the last 40 years. It's like, I know you could take it from where it is now and turn it into your guitar and make it better. So just rethink what that guitar is. And this is what I came up with.
So what did you do differently? How did you change it?
Well, the biggest one was stemming from our philosophy of always wanting to refine the instrument, refine the player's experience with that instrument. The desire is to make that thing more than what a musician could ask for. So rather than just trying to work around, this little shortcoming here, this little problem here, the idea is, can I build a better guitar? Something that's just more musical. So by more musical, what I mean is the tangible attributes that make an instrument functioning. Long sustain, balance between notes, volume, carrying power. You know, those kinds of things, the clarity of its voice, those kinds of things that make an instrument useful to a musician. So in this case, different glues, a different finish, a different structure to the inside of the guitar altogether. So a different bracing pattern, different thickness of the same materials that this guitar has always been. It's always been an East Indian rosewood and Sitka spruce guitar. Well, I'm not going to change that. I like that combo. That's a classic wood pairing. It's always been a light bound guitar. So some of its aesthetic cues, I want to retain those because that's part of that instrument's identity. But most of the structure, even down to the set of strings that I put on it, all of that changes.
So we're here at your workbench. This is kind of where the focus of where you get all your ideas and you do your work every day.
Essentially what makes us unique amongst guitar manufacturers is that every guitar we make, every new development, it starts and ends at the workbench.
So do you have wood just sitting here, or you just go somewhere and decide, today I'm going to grab a piece of spruce or something?
Sometimes it's like that, where I'll go, okay, this guitar that I'm imagining, I want it to have a Sitka spruce top, or I want it to have European spruce. Or I found this one plank of wood that I'm interested in. I'll make a guitar out of that and see what it does. Let me cut a top out of it. Let me cut, it looks like it would be ideal for this particular component of a guitar. I'll try it and see what it's like.
So when you have a blank slab of wood, how do you start? Well, where do you go first? What
I like to do is get an idea of what it is I'm setting out to accomplish. Because if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you arrived there?
Well, there's a good point there, yeah.
You know, you need to have a clear idea of what it is you're trying to build. And so for me, I'll know the instrument that I want to make, and I'll find the right type of wood, the right piece, and then I find where that thing lives inside the piece of wood. So it might be, you know, a big chunk of spruce, part of a tree, you know, literally a chunk that was split out of it. Well, I'll take it, plane a face, cut a top on a bandsaw, bring it in here, join the halves, start taking it to thickness, you know. And guitar making it's a process of subtraction, primarily. You're taking this big piece of wood, you're starting with rough cuts, with big machines, big tools, and taking away everything that doesn't need to be there. And then slowly you refine those individual parts until you finally just kind of stop touching it, and it's the guitar you wanted.
For people who are not really familiar, can you just explain why a solid top guitar is better than one that's laminated?
Well, for starters, glue doesn't sound good.
Okay, and there's glue between the pieces of...
You have to glue stuff together, right?
In order to get it thick enough, is that the idea?
In order to have it there.
Yeah.
Just to have something that with enough structure that you can use it. Now, traditionally a laminate guitar or a laminated guitar, the way that you're harvesting that material is like you'll take a log and put this thing on what looks like a giant pencil sharpener. And it's got a big blade, and you'll peel this long shaving off of that piece of wood.
Okay.
That's what a layered wood guitar is made of. They're made out of those shavings.
Okay.
It's a really thin piece of wood that doesn't have much structural value. When you combine it with other similar pieces, well, then you can build it up into something.
So is it usually glued onto what?
It'll be glued onto another piece of the same material, different maybe grain direction, something like that.
So it's not artificial materials, it's just
not at all.
It's not one piece, it's a bunch of...
It's a composite of different pieces.
Together, yeah. Okay, and so the sound doesn't vibrate the same way through it?
It's not quite the same.
Yeah.
A piece of wood in its natural state, something that's been sawn, you know, sawn is a real thin plank.
Yeah.
There's a certain internal velocity of sound. The sound, or you have to refer it to more like energy and less sound at that point. Energy will pass through it really quickly and won't be inhibited in almost any way.
Right.
Well, that makes for a really good sounding guitar. That's a really efficient type of material to build a sound amplifier. That's what a guitar body is. It's a mechanical sound amplifier. You know, so something like a layered wood guitar, well, they can be made very durable. They make incredibly efficient use of the resource of the material because there's so much less waste involved. So you're peeling this thing, not generating sawdust. You're not sawing slabs out of it and ending up with a big mountain of sawdust at the end. As well, at times they can be more durable.
And less expensive, right?
And less expensive because of the efficiency of the material usage.
I see. The scale length of the neck, the difference is, how does that impact the way a guitar plays?
Sounds and
how it feels and that whole thing.
That's an interesting can of worms.
Okay.
Because one of the things that very few people understand, when a string vibrates, it's vibrating in all three dimensions. It's going in every direction.
Okay.
It's not just a side to side or even a circular motion as it vibrates.
Right.
There's also a wave moving this way, back and forth on the string. A physicist will call it the longitudinal wave.
Okay.
Okay, so this string is this incredibly complex motion.
Yeah.
Now, what you have with the scale length is a certain window where the side-to-side motion, that produces the note that you really hear. And this longitudinal wave, that's where most of the string's energy lives. There's a certain window where those two are not conflicting each other. That's why you typically see at concert pitch a guitar scale length between about 24.5 inches and about 25 3/4 inches. Because at concert pitch and relatively standard tension strings, those two waves don't interfere with each other too much.
Okay.
If you go outside of that, you're going to start to get some interference. Okay? So what you're looking for with scale length, primarily on a standard, some sort of standard range guitar,
Yeah.
is a balance between tension and inertia. A larger string, higher tension, has potentially a little more inertia to use to set that guitar in motion. There's a little more energy stored in it.
Okay.
So when you strike the string, it's got this little extra boldness. You know,
So
it's got
that's a
some
longer
power.
scale length?
That's a longer scale
Yeah.
length. For, let's say I've got a 13 thousandths diameter high E guitar string.
Yeah.
That's the high E out of a medium set. If I'm at, you know, say 25.5 inches of scale length, has a certain amount of tension. If I make the vibrating length of the string a little shorter, maybe I move it down to 25 inches or 24.75 inches. That same size string at the same frequency doesn't have as much tension on it. So that translates to a little softer hand feel, a little easier fingering, with a little less boldness because it has a little less inherent inertia built into it.
So kind of like the difference between using light gauge strings and medium gauge strings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're playing with the same effect.
Yeah, gotcha.
So let's say a great example. I've got a Stratocaster with a 25.5 inch scale length, and I put a 10 through 46 set of strings on there. Okay, that low E string has a certain twang.
Right.
That's partly the guitar's design, but partly the scale length. If I put that exact same set of strings on a Les Paul, which has always been said to be a 24.75 scale, it's actually about 24 9/16.
Okay.
It's a little shorter, you know, almost by an inch. That same set of strings is a lot looser and doesn't have the same twangy effect on that low E. It comes across as a little, some people will hear it as a little warmer, some people hear it as a little tubby,
Right.
a little more flappy, or, you know, there's lots of different ways to describe it, but the point is that it doesn't have quite as much of that bright, bold pop.
Very good. That explains it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Andy. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
This is great stuff.